Tonight, a space station is not under attack by missiles. It is under attack by paperwork. One mechanic is kneeling beside an overheating coolant line, and his access is suddenly revoked. No tools, no parts, no overrides, and the system gives him an approval time that guarantees failure. So here's the question. Who benefits when a dock cannot breathe? Because if one tug loses position, the whole freight queue becomes shrapnel, and the people in charge keep calling it safety. Cassian Rook knelt beside the coolant manifold in Sumpworks Bay while the deck vibrated under a tug thruster test. The pipe was dull alloy, warm to the touch, and the gauge needle was already sliding down. If it dipped past the red mark, a tug would fail its heat dump and the whole queue would start to freeze in place. Quartermaster Wren Talbot hovered by the rail, tablet hugged to his chest. How long until it trips? 10 minutes if the bin opens, Cassian said. Maybe less if the queue keeps pushing. If one tug drops position, this corridor becomes shrapnel. Cassian pulled a spare seal from his tool roll and reached for the service port. He tapped his RIT key to authorize the swap, expecting the usual green blink and a clean click. The port light blinked red instead, and the station voice sounded almost cheerful. Access denied. Cassian tried again, slower, as if patience might change a ledger. His wrist display answered with a second line that made his throat tighten. Maintenance rights ledger state revoked. Talbot's face drained. Revoked? During your shift? Cassian felt heat climb his neck. Authority was not ego here. Authority was the difference between a tug holding position and a cargo sled ripping loose. He opened the override menu and submitted an emergency request, forcing his hands to stay steady. The system answered at once. Gate seal protocol is active. No override is available. Talbot let out a tight breath. Can you open the parts hatch manually? Cassian crossed to the bin wall and gripped the latch. It did not budge. He pressed the mechanical release meant for fires, and it stayed locked, as if the metal itself had learned obedience. Even the hinge is under protocol, Cassian said. A soft alarm pulsed from the dock speakers. Not a siren, just a steady reminder that time was being measured for them. Cassian looked through the bay window. Tug noses sat aligned in the corridor of light, and cargo sleds hung on clamps, waiting for clearance that was not coming. Talbot stared at the window. If the tugs cannot dump heat, the queue freezes. And if one drops position, the queue becomes shrapnel, Cassian said. Cassian tagged the manifold as a safety hazard and pushed it into the automated queue. For one breath, the ticket turned green. Then it turned gray. Denied. Prior authorization is required. Cassian stared at the spare seal in his hand. It was real metal. The lock was not. The lock still won. The gauge dipped again, and the manifold vibrated under his palm as if it was trying to warn him in a language he could feel. Cassian forced his voice steady. Bleed heat through the auxiliary loop. Cut thrust if you have to. Talbot shook his head. That stalls everything. It is stalling already, Cassian said. He pocketed the seal and stood, and the central question landed in his mind like a wrench dropped on steel. Who touched my rights and why now? He did not run. Running meant panic, and panic became reports. He walked fast into the corridor outside Sumpworks Bay, where the air smelled like coolant and old coffee, and pinged the supply desk on his communications unit. Supply, this is Cassian Rook. Confirm the revocation source. Lisa Karen answered, voice clipped and tired. Confirmed. It is station-wide in layers. The maintenance rights office issued it. Director Marek Thane, Cassian said, tasting the name like rust. Lisa exhaled. He is calling it a safety adjustment. He is also locking requests behind review. How long is review? Cassian asked. You do not want the answer, Lisa said. The dock is stacking up. Cassian watched a line of workers push carts past a sealed parts hatch. No one looked at the hatch. Looking did not open it. I need a workaround, Cassian said. There was a pause. There are none that stay clean, Lisa replied. If you want a clean path, you wait. I do not have time to wait. Then go lower, Lisa said, where the work still happens. Quietly, Cassian cut the channel and took the service lift down. 2 levels below, the lights were harsher and the air ran warmer. The station here was not polished. It was patched, taped, and kept, alive by hands that never appeared on a tour. Cassian heard the steady click of a ratchet and followed the sound into a recessed alcove. A woman crouched over a cargo clamp actuator, coveralls patched at the knee. Her toolkit was small and organized, and she moved with calm speed, like the problem was a familiar enemy she had already beaten before. Cassian stopped at the edge of the light. You are working without a RIT key. She did not look up. Everything is failing with a RIT key. Cassian felt annoyance rise, then stall. He watched her reseat a contact plate and wipe it clean. The actuator indicator turned green, and only then did she glance up. Her eyes were dark and steady, the kind that did not waste motion. Veyra Sorn, she said. Contract mechanic. No authorization. That makes me convenient when someone wants results without paperwork. Cassian kept his hands visible. My authority was revoked. I cannot open parts bins. A coolant manifold is overheating. Veyra studied him, then nodded toward his wrist display. Show me the denial state. Cassian turned his wrist so she could read. Her gaze flicked across the lines. Revoked at the ledger, she said. Gate seal protocol is active. That is not local enforcement. It is the hub, Cassian said. It is the spine, Veyra replied. Locks in the spine are meant to stop sabotage. And this lock is sabotaging us, Cassian said. Veyra snapped her kit shut and stood. She was shorter than Cassian, but she held herself like she had survived bigger rooms than this bay. You filed a safety ticket? She asked. Denied. Then request a temporary token, Veyra said. They will make you wait, but you will see the number. Cassian opened a request and attached the hazard tag. The system accepted it, then painted the status in bland gray. Estimated approval is 17 hours. Cassian stared at the words. 17 hours would cook the tug line. 17 hours would turn a dock into a pile of stalled mass. Veyra watched his face. Now you understand the game. The question is who benefits when the dock cannot breathe. Cassian closed the request. I do not bypass protocol. Veyra tilted her head. Protocol already bypassed you. You are still loyal to it. The dock alarm pulsed again, faint through bulkheads. Cassian measured the risk the way he always had, in time and consequence. If we bypass the lock, they will pin the liability on us, Cassian said. They pin liability on you when you obey too, Veyra said. The only question is whether you save anyone first. Cassian breathed once, slow. My goal is simple. Keep the tug line stable and keep this dock alive. Veyra nodded. Then we do two things. You go talk to Marek Thane, so you can say you tried. I map hinge points around the lock. You can do that? Cassian asked. I can find stress points, Veyra said. That is what mechanics do. Metals fail where they are forced to pretend they do not. Cassian held her gaze. He did not trust her yet, but he trusted the green light on the actuator. He trusted the way she had made the station behave again. Stay off cameras, he said. Veyra gave a thin smile. I live off cameras. 3 hours after the revocation, Cassian stood outside refit annex. The corridor was cleaner here, and the air smelled like sanitizer. Camera sat in plain view, confident, as if seeing was the same as safety. A station wardenate guard scanned him and frowned. Restricted access flag. I'm expected, Cassian said. The guard checked a screen and waved him through. Do not wander. Cassian entered a small meeting room with a polished table that looked unused. Director Marek Thane stood behind it, jacket perfect, hands resting lightly as if the station were not sweating. Officer Rook, Thane said. Thank you for coming. My rights were revoked mid-shift, Cassian replied. Restore them. A tug line is overheating. Thane nodded, sympathy practiced. We are in a complex window. Broad rights create risk. My record is clean, Cassian said. Excellent, Thane agreed. That is why I can offer you a solution. Thane tapped his tablet and slid a document across the table. Dense text, fine print, and the shape Cassian recognized from a lifetime of orders. A temporary restoration addendum, Thane said. Safeguards to protect the station. Cassian skimmed. Every action required secondary approval. Every tool used was logged. Any deviation triggered automatic suspension. This is a leash, Cassian said. It is accountability, Thane replied. In wartime, accountability saves lives. Cassian looked up. And if I refuse? Thane's voice stayed soft. Then ration lock remains in effect. Cassian felt his stomach drop. That controls supply flow. It protects the dock from unauthorized work, Thane said. Panic causes accidents. Accidents kill more than enemy fire. You are choking the dock to force compliance, Cassian said. Thane lifted his chin a fraction. I am preventing catastrophic failure. Clean records produce clean outcomes. Cassian leaned closer and found the clause buried in the middle. It forbade disclosure, and it forbade communication about the maintenance rights revocation. You are forbidding me to speak about the lock, Cassian said. Thane's smile thinned. Public speculation destabilizes operations. I will not have rumors running faster than freight. Cassian thought of the spare seal in his pocket. He thought of Talbot bleeding heat through an auxiliary loop, and carts passing sealed hatches, pushed by people who had learned to look away. What is the clean signature? Cassian asked. Thane did not blink. An internal phrase. A reminder that safety requires clean signatures. It means you can harm people without touching them, Cassian said. Thane's gaze stayed calm. Sign the addendum. Restore order. Fix your manifold. Keep spine dock stable. Cassian's hand hovered over the tablet. One signature and his writ key would light again. One signature and he would help build the next lock. He lowered his hand. I will not sign, he said. Thane nodded as if he had expected it. Then you accept responsibility for what follows. Cassian straightened. You already decided what follows. You just want my name under it. Thane set the tablet aside. Station Warden 8 will be informed that your access remains restricted. Cassian turned for the door. Thane spoke once more, voice smooth. The war is won by compliance, Officer Rook. Cassian paused at the threshold. The war is lost when you call a chokehold safety. He walked out. Veyra waited in the corridor, arms folded, eyes on the cameras. Well, she asked. He offered me my tools back for my silence, Cassian said. Veyra's expression did not change. And you said no? Cassian nodded. Now I'm officially useless. Veyra leaned closer, voice low. Not useless. Unlicensed. That is different. I found a service spine behind a coolant panel near Sumpworks Bay. It is a hinge point. It is old, and it still listens to physics. Cassian felt the station shift in his mind. Not a fortress of rules, but a machine with seams. When? He asked. Veyra glanced at the nearest camera and then away. After. The next dot pulse. When everyone is watching the cue. Cassian listened to the distant hum of spine dock. He could not hear gunfire, but he could hear locks and alarms, polite and relentless. He met Veyra's eyes and made the decision that ended his clean life. Then we move on the pulse, he said. No more waiting. Veyra nodded once. Now you see the enemy. Ravelin Junction ran a scheduled power dip that made the corridor lights soften, then snap back. It felt less like maintenance and more like a reminder that someone else controlled the rhythm. Cassian Rook and Veyra Sorn waited beside the coolant panel she had marked near Sumpworks Bay. The metal was scarred and old, the kind that had survived too many hurried refits. You said it still listens to physics. Cassian whispered. It listens to stress, Veyra said, not to signatures. She slid a thin pry tool into the seam and flexed. The panel did not open, but it shifted enough to tell her the latch was carrying load it was never meant to hold. Cassian watched the corridor while workers pushed carts past sealed bins without looking up, as if attention itself could be punished. Veyra set a torque driver against a fastener that looked decorative and turned with patient force. The fastener rotated a fraction, then stopped. That is not a screw, Cassian said. It is a pin pretending, Veyra replied. Added after the last audit. Cassian's communications unit buzzed with a short text from Quartermaster Wren Talbot. Heat margin down. Tug line asking for priority. No parts release. Cassian read it once and felt his throat tighten. He tapped his communications unit and opened a channel. Lisa, we found a hinge point. Can you read what the spine feeds if we get access? He asked. Lisa Karen answered over a blur of voices. Come to the supply desk. Thane is moving. Bring Veyra. Cassian glanced at the wall gauge. The warning light had crept toward orange. "We do not have time," he said. "You do not have choices," Lisa replied. "Not clean ones." "Now." Cassian cut the channel. Veyra pulled her tool away without protest, and they took the service lift up past taped warnings and locked hatches. The air grew cooler, but the station felt tighter, like it had pulled its shoulders inward. At the Ravelin supply desk, Lisa met, them with a tablet and a tired face. She shut the door and dimmed the privacy glass. "This is the map they teach you," she said, showing a simple approval chain. "Request, justify, approve." She tapped, and a second layer unfolded, dense with branching gates. "This is the real map," Lisa continued. "Rate keys come from 3 points. Shift managers, safety office, maintenance rights office. Any one of them can revoke you, and the others will pretend it is normal." Cassian leaned in. "That is how my request died twice." "It is how it dies for everyone," Lisa said. "Look at the timing." A timeline appeared. Gray blocks marched in neat intervals, each one stamped with a window label that matched freight schedules. "Revoking in waves," Veyra said. Lisa nodded. "Every 6 hours. And the waves match convoy windows. Not a panic response. A schedule." Cassian felt his jaw tighten. Convoy windows were planned weeks out, which meant the revocation was planned with the same care as a battle. Lisa swiped to dock telemetry. Coolant ring is at 87%. Cold chain cradles are losing margin. Dock 12 just reported a drop in clamp stability. A second chime sounded. The dock count board updated again, and the waiting line grew longer. "Thane calls it safety," Cassian said. "He calls it compliance," Lisa replied. "His addendum circle is attaching new clauses to every request. They do not fix hardware. They fix who gets blamed when hardware fails." Veyra's gaze stayed on the map. "Where is the token vault?" Lisa tapped a node deep in the lattice. "Here. Root tokens live there. If you can see the ledger feed, you can see who signed the waves." Cassian looked at the one log field that was not locked. It was almost insulting in its simplicity. They name an outside path. "It says the source authority is external," Cassian said. Lisa held his eyes. "The station is not the only hand on the switch. I cannot see the signer, but I can see the relay path. It is not a civilian node." Veyra exhaled, controlled. "So the leash leads off station." Lisa lowered her voice. "Thane is looking for you already. If you want another thread, there's a token clerk at gate 9. He is frightened enough to make mistakes." "Name?" Cassian asked. "Nico Vance," Lisa said. "Night window. He is the kind of system choose first." Cassian nodded once. "We talked to him." Veyra nodded back. "We do not crush him." Gate 9 smelled like ozone and freight dust. Containers waited under sealed arms, labels perfect and useless. Nico Vance sat behind a glass partition, posture rigid. His eyes flicked up when Cassian approached, then snapped away. "I cannot help you," Nico said before Cassian spoke. "You are flagged." Cassian kept his hands open. "I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking what you are being told to process." Nico swallowed. "I process packages. I do not question them." Veyra leaned closer to the glass. "Then show us a header. No details, just the wrapper." Nico's gaze darted to the camera lens above the partition. It stayed fixed, silent, and confident, like it had already decided what the footage meant. "If I look, I lose my certificate," he whispered. "Then I lose my birth." Cassian swallowed his first instinct to file a complaint. A complaint would name Nico as a witness. "We are not here to punish you," Cassian said. "We are trying to keep the dock from failing." Nico's fingers tapped under the desk, a nervous rhythm. He glanced down the corridor, where a suited auditor spoke to a Wardenate officer. "Inspector Hale Marrow was here earlier," Nico said. "He told me errors are proof of misconduct." Veyra's voice stayed gentle. "That is not guidance. That is a threat." Nico nodded without looking at her. "Everything is a threat now." At last he reached down and slid a thin audit strip through a slot. Cassian caught it low and read fast. Sender tag, timestamp, service reference, and a name that tasted like a contract weapon. Varnak Logistics Combined. Rights Restoration Service, Cassian said. "It is called remediation," Nico replied, voice tight. It comes with an addendum. If any step is outside the script, write snap back and the request becomes an incident. Veyra's eyes narrowed. So they sell a leash, then punish anyone who runs. Nico's face tightened like he expected a blow. I did not write it. I do not even see where the fees go. Cassian pointed to a line on the strip. This clause ties the shop to the person who touches the tool. Nico nodded. It makes one person carry the risk, so the combine stays clean. Cassian felt his stomach turn. He heard Marek Thane's calm voice in his memory, neat and certain, as if neat paperwork could keep a station alive. Cassian softened his tone. Nico, where does the package originate? Nico shook his head, then hesitated. Fear and anger wrestled across his face. It routes through an external relay, he said. The sender is wrapped, but the routing mark is not. It is military. Cassian felt cold spread through his stomach. Military? Nico nodded once, small. Not the station. Not the combine. Something higher. Something that uses schedules like weapons. Veyra looked at Cassian. It was not a plea. It was a question about who he wanted to be. Cassian folded the strip and tucked it away. If they ask, you never saw us. Nico's voice cracked. They already know. Cassian held his gaze. Then survive. That is your job tonight. By the end of the watch, the station's mood changed. The alarms did not get louder, but the silence got sharper. In the main corridor, station wardenate uniforms clustered with scanners and clipboards. Workshop doors locked in sequence, one after another, like a slow execution. A worker stepped out of bay and found the door sealing behind him. He tried the handle, confused and afraid. A wardenate officer spoke in a voice meant to sound kind. It is for safety, the officer said. You will be reassigned. Cassian spotted Warden Juno Price near the junction. Juno's posture was straight, eyes moving with the calm of enforcement, the kind of calm that made chaos look like policy. Juno walked toward Cassian. Officer Rook, present your writ key and stand down. I cannot stand down, Cassian said. The tug line is overheating. The dock will stall. Unauthorized work is a hazard, Juno replied. Director Thane issued a right sweep. Veyra kept her hands low. You are locking shops mid-shift. Juno looked at her, gaze cool. And you are? A mechanic, Veyra said. The kind that keeps your lights on. Juno raised the scanner. It chirped twice, then flashed red. No certificate, Juno said. No station rights. Cassian stepped forward. My certificate is valid. Juno scanned Cassian's badge. The chirp was louder, as if the device enjoyed delivering news. Suspended, Juno said. Effective immediately. Restricted from all maintenance actions. Cassian felt heat climb his face. On what grounds? Risk of protocol breach, Juno said. You are now a liability. Liability? Spreads. Cassian looked past Juno to the sealed bin carts that should have been headed for the manifold. Everything real was waiting on something intangible. This is not safety, Cassian said. This is leverage. Juno's voice stayed even. Leverage is not my concern. Compliance is. You were offered a path. You refused. Cassian understood then that the sweep had been waiting for his refusal, like a trap that only needed a wait. Veyra touched Cassian's sleeve, light as a signal. Not here, she murmured. Cassian forced his voice steady. If the dock fails, you will own the outcome. Juno nodded once. The outcome will be documented. Cassian turned away before anger could become a mistake. They slipped into a service alcove that smelled of warm metal. They took your right to act, Veyra said softly. That is what suspension is. Cassian stared at his hands. If I touch a tool now, I become the problem on paper. Veyra, open her kit. If you do not touch a tool, the station becomes the problem in real life. Cassian breathed once, slow, and made the decision he had avoided all his career. We keep the station alive, he said. Veyra nodded, and her voice warmed for the first time. Then we stop asking permission from a lock that wants us quiet. They moved back towards Sumpworks Bay, through service corridors that cameras ignored. The closer they got, the warmer the air felt, and the more the station sounded like it was grinding its teeth. Inside the bay, the coolant manifold shook under strain. Talbot stood near the rail, jaw tight, watching the gauge crawl upward. "You are both restricted," Talbot said, voice low. "Warden 8 is 2 corridors away." Cassian did not argue. He looked at the manifold, then at the spare seal in his pocket. "How long?" Cassian asked. Talbot swallowed. "Less than an hour before the loop trips." Veyra crouched and brushed her fingers along the service port. "We can do this without opening the bin. We use what we have." Cassian hesitated. The rule book in his head screamed, but the station in front of him was louder. He pulled the seal out and handed it to her. "Make it count." Veyra set it in place with steady hands. Cassian held the light, keeping his body between her and the bay entrance. The torque was familiar, honest and quiet, and when the seal seated, the vibration eased just a fraction, like the station had exhaled. Talbot stared at the gauge as it stopped climbing. "You just saved the tug line." Cassian felt no triumph. He felt the weight of the line he had crossed. Somewhere beyond the bulkheads, spine dock pulsed again, steady and indifferent, and Cassian understood he no longer had a way back to clean. Ravelin Junction stopped feeling like a station and started feeling like a throat. A shift horn sounded twice because no one rotated. People stayed at their posts and blinked through dry eyes. Cassian Rook walked the spine dock catwalk with his hands in his pockets, keeping them there to remember he was suspended. Below him, cargo sleds sat clamped and silent. Their status lights pulsed yellow, patient in a way people could not be. On the lower deck, a line formed at a water tap that should not have a line. The tap still ran, but the ration lock had slowed it enough to make time visible. Quartermaster Wren Talbot caught up beside Cassian, tablet hugged to his chest. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt. "Your patch held?" Talbot said. "It bought time," Cassian replied. "How much?" Talbot glanced down. "Less than a watch. Coolant spools are almost gone." Cassian looked at the storage hatches. The bins were full on paper, and the hinges stayed locked. He watched a worker carry a cracked filter cassette like it was glass. The man held it close, as if shame could seal a leak. A tug pilot's voice came over the public channel, tight but controlled. "Spine dock, tug 3. Dumping heat through auxiliary again. Thrust margin is fading." No one answered with comfort. Comfort needed authority, and authority had been revoked. Veyra Sorn waited near a service ladder, tool kit tight against her hip. She listened to the dock like it was an engine. "You hear that lag?" she asked. Cassian nodded. "Clamp timing is drifting." "Drifting becomes slipping," Veyra said. "Slipping becomes collision." Talbot grimaced. "Warden 8 says do not touch anything. Director Thane says safety first." Veyra looked at him. "Safety that forbids work is a slow failure." Cassian watched a loader operator pause. The man pressed his forehead to a rail. He did not sit. He just breathed and kept moving. "Filter cassettes?" Cassian asked. Talbot shook his head. "Last clean set. When an earlier. The rest are locked behind gate seal." Cassian asked the question he still wanted to mean something. "What does the review queue say?" Talbot gave a small laugh that had no humor. 16 hours for filters. 12 for coolant. 2 days for cold chain cradle parts. Cassian felt his training resist the numbers. Then his conscience stepped in. "What spoils first?" he asked. Talbot's face tightened. "The cold chain. The medical rations. The biologics." Procedure was supposed to prevent harm. Now procedure was scheduling harm. They passed Dock 12. The dot count board updated again, and minutes became hours. A station Warden 8 officer stood near the board, calm and unmoved. Juno Price. Juno's gaze met Cassian's. It held procedure, not anger. "You are still on deck," Juno said. "I live on this deck," Cassian replied. "Not today," Juno said. "Do not approach controlled systems." Cassian kept his voice flat. "Who can touch them now?" Juno did not answer, and that silence was an answer. Cassian's communications unit buzzed once. "Lisa Karen, one line only. If you're moving, do it before the next sweep window." Veyra leaned in low. "Your station is being sold back to itself." A clamp arm stuttered and froze short. A cargo sled swayed and settled again. The dock did not fail. It warned. Cassian stared at the sway. "If we cannot open the bins, We cannot stabilize the ring. Veyra's voice stayed steady. Then we stopped treating the bins as the station. Talbot frowned. Meaning? It means we go where the rights live, Veyra said. Token vault. Cassian felt the idea land like a dropped wrench, loud and irreversible. They will call it sabotage, Talbot said. They already call you hazards, Veyra replied. At least do it for a reason. Cassian looked at the people below. Tired shoulders, raw hands, and small stubborn routines holding the line. He remembered his oath to safety. It never promised obedience. If we get caught, you lose your berth, Cassian said. Veyra met his eyes. If I lose my right to work, I get shipped out anyway. Cassian waited. She rarely offered personal facts. They rotate contract mechanics like parts, Veyra said. If we become inconvenient, we are reassigned. No appeal. No home. Talbot looked down. That is legal. Legal is what the ledger says, Veyra replied. Cassian felt something in him break, quiet and clean. It was not courage. It was obedience finally burning out. Show me the route, he said. Veyra nodded once. Gray corridor. Behind the coolant bulkhead. Stay low. Cassian turned to Talbot. Tell Lisa we are moving. Do not try to stop us. Talbot swallowed and nodded. I will keep the dock breathing. Cassian and Veyra went down the service ladder. Heat and machinery hum rose under the polished corridors. Gray corridor earned its name. The walls were unpainted alloy, dark with grease and old fingerprints, and the air was warm and heavy with insulation dust. Cassian walked first, light dimmed, ears tuned for boots. Veyra followed, silent as a shadow that had learned work. 2 turns in, the station sounds thinned until you could hear your own breath. Timing, Cassian whispered. Patrol sweep on the quarter hour, Veyra said. Cassian nodded and checked his watch against the station cycle. He shut the glow off because even light could testify. They reached a narrow junction with a flush access panel. Veyra knelt and set her ear to the seam. Listen, she whispered. Cassian heard almost nothing. Veyra tapped twice. A faint hollow answer came back. Vault conduit, she said. They hid it behind the old frame. Cassian switched his badge to passive. It felt like stepping off a marked path. Veyra slid a thin blade into the seam. The panel resisted, then yielded with a small click. No alarm followed. She eased it open and slipped her hand inside, finding a bundled line with a security tag. Gate seal feed, she said. They piggybacked the vault on it. Cassian pulled a small diagnostic stub from his pocket. It was old, personal, and reliable. I used this before the ledger learned to hate it, he said. Veyra's mouth twitched. Then make it useful. Cassian connected the stub. His display flashed a warning, then showed raw traffic. Tokens, timestamps, approval chains, and permission moving like a river. Cassian did not stare at the words. He watched the rhythm, because he had spent his life reading rhythms. Find a wave schedule, Veyra said. Cassian filtered and saw the pattern. Revocation blocks every 6 hours, spaced with precision. He traced the signer field and found what Lisa had hinted. The relay path was armored. Veyra frowned. Armored relay means military. Cassian's fingers tightened. Orbital Theater Command uses armored relays. A buried field opened under the signature. It read like a note meant for insiders. Doctrine reference, Veyra said. Kest cell. Cassian read it twice. Darian Kest. Veyra watched his face. Who is that? A Commodore, Cassian said. He turned schedules into pressure. Veyra stared at the lines. So, Thane is not the top. No, Cassian replied. Thane is a glove. He widened the capture window and pulled the rule set, the relay path, and the doctrine tag. Then he added something else, a list of approved exemptions, names that could still touch lock systems. The list was short and ugly. Varnak has a carve-out, Cassian murmured. Veyra exhaled once hard. They built the cage and sold the key. Cassian saved it all to the stub. A soft chirp sounded behind them. Not an alarm, only a proximity ping. Cassian froze. Veyra killed her light and pressed to the wall. Cassian did the same, heart loud in his ears. Boots passed at the far junction. A Wardenate patrol moved with lazy confidence. They were not hunting yet. They were sweeping, One officer paused as if listening. Cassian held his breath until his lungs burned. The boots moved on. When the steps faded, Cassian sealed the panel. Veyra tugged him back into motion. "We have minutes," she whispered. They moved down gray corridor, faster but controlled because panic would echo. At the ladder hatch, Veyra paused. "Say it," she said. Cassian met her eyes. "We touched the lever behind the station." Veyra nodded. "Then the station will bite back." The bite came before they reached Spine Dock. A new message appeared on public screens, plain and polite. Safety posture, escalation. Workshop sectors locked. Cassian felt the station tighten with intent. Station Wardenate formed a line in the dock corridor. Juno Price stood at the center, helmet on. Juno raised a hand. "Stop." Cassian stopped, breathing even. Veyra stayed half a step behind. Juno's visor angled. The system flagged an access anomaly in gray corridor. Cassian kept his voice flat. "I'll walk the corridor." Juno gestured. Two officers shifted to flank them, not touching, only placing bodies where bodies mattered. Director Thane issued containment. Juno said, "You will come with us." Cassian felt the stub in his pocket. It could die in seconds. A suited figure appeared at the far end. Marek Thane, walking as if the station belonged to him. He stopped a few steps away and looked at Cassian. "Officer Rook," Thane said, "you're forcing my hand." "You forced mine first," Cassian replied. Thane's gaze slid to Veyra. Uncredentialed labor in restricted space. Veyra did not flinch. "You locked the tools." The work did not stop. Thane smiled faintly. "Work always stops. It simply stops for different reasons." Cassian refused the urge to shout. Shouting would become an incident clip. "What do you want?" Cassian asked. Thane held up a tablet. "A final offer. Signed the Restoration Addendum. Return what you took. I will recommend leniency." Cassian stared at him. "You are afraid of what is on it." Thane's smile stayed. His eyes changed by a fraction. "I protect the station from rumors," Thane said. "Rumors cause panic." "The dock is panicking because it is starving," Cassian replied. Thane stepped closer. "Varnak teams are inbound. Certified. Controlled. The dock will stabilize. And you will charge it for breathing," Veyra said. Thane ignored her. "You could have been part of the solution. Instead, you chose the role of threat." Cassian's pocket felt heavy. He realized Thane knew exactly where the packet was. Thane lowered his voice, almost kind. "If this becomes a case, the record will show intent. The record will show names." Cassian understood the threat. Thane could isolate Veyra with one signature. Veyra leaned toward Cassian, barely moving her lips. "He wants you to save yourself." Cassian swallowed. "I cannot do that." A Wardenate officer shifted closer. Cassian raised both hands. "Do not touch me," he said. Juno's voice hardened. "You are escalating." Cassian's chest tightened. He looked at Veyra and saw fear there, but not for herself. Fear that he would choose the safe lie. He leaned toward her and spoke low. "If they take it, it dies." Veyra nodded. "Then do not let them take it." Cassian scanned the corridor. He spotted Talbot near a clam console, watching like a man trying to vanish. Cassian met his eyes and made a small training signal. "Run." Talbot hesitated for a breath, then slipped into a service stairwell. Thane saw the glance. His calm cracked. "Stop him," Thane snapped. Juno barked an order. Two officers broke formation and sprinted after Talbot. Cassian stepped into the gap. Veyra moved with him, fast and close. Juno reached for Cassian's arm. Cassian twisted away and felt fabric tear. There was no strike, only bodies in a narrow corridor. Veyra hooked her foot behind a cable guide and yanked. A portable lamp toppled and clanged. Heads turned. Cassian pulled the diagnostic stub and pressed it into Veyra's hand. "Hide it," he said. Veyra's eyes widened. "What about you?" Cassian's voice cracked for the first time. "I brought you into this. I will not leave you holding the blame." Veyra shook her head once. "You still think the ledger is the only judge." Cassian met her gaze. "It is not the only judge. It is the one with teeth." Veyra slid the stub into her toolkit and hid it under a layer of seals. Her hands went steady again. Juno grabbed Cassian's shoulder and shoved him to the wall. Cassian hit metal and tasted copper. "Enough," Juno said. "You are detained." Thane approached, breathing controlled again. He looked at Cassian like a man cleaning a spill. You see, Thane said. No guns. Just procedure. Cassian smiled without joy. Procedure is your weapon. Thane leaned closer. And it works. Thane turned his gaze to Veyra. Search her. Veyra's jaw tightened. Cassian felt panic flare. Before the order could land, the station speakers crackled. A new tone cut through the dock noise, low and sharp. Incoming traffic. Priority military. The corridor went quiet. Even the clamp motors seemed to pause. A voice filled the space, filtered and distant, with the cadence of someone used to being obeyed. Orbital Theater Command to Ravelin Junction. Execute schedule shift. Hold all outbound convoys. Prepare for corridor denial. Cassian felt the words land like cold iron. Thane went still. Juno stiffened. Veyra stared at Cassian, and Cassian understood the truth in a single breath. The lock was not about safety. It was rehearsal. The station speakers had barely gone quiet when Cassian Rook felt the corridor tilt in his head. The voice from Orbital Theater Command had not threatened anyone by name. It had only moved the schedule, and the station obeyed like a trained animal. Warden Juno Price kept Cassian in a side bay with a clear wall and a single bench. No cuffs, no bruises, only the kind of restraint that looked reasonable on paper. You are not a criminal, Juno said. You are a risk. Cassian kept his hands on his knees. Risk is what keeps the dock alive. Juno studied him through the visor. Then stop making it worse. Minutes later, the bay door clicked. Lisa Karen stepped in with her tablet tucked under her arm and a look that had learned not to flinch. I pulled you into a procedural transfer, Lisa said. It is still a cage, but the bars are thinner. Juno turned her head a fraction. You are overstepping. I am preventing a station incident, Lisa replied. The difference is who signs it. Juno held the stare, then stepped back to the corridor. The door did not lock behind her. It only watched. Lisa leaned close to Cassian. Veyra is not here. That is good. Cassian felt his stomach tighten. Where is she? Moving, Lisa said. And Talbot is alive. He got your packet out of sight, not out of danger. Cassian nodded once. Then we need a path that cannot be swallowed. Lisa tapped her tablet and opened a map of the station, not the public one. It was full of service arteries, power trunks, and small rooms labeled as if they were organs. You do not win by repairing hardware, Lisa said. You win by making the truth expensive to bury. Cassian exhaled. Who will stand with us? Lisa did not hesitate. The people already punished for doing the right thing. She led Cassian through a maintenance access route that still worked because it was too boring for executives to notice. The lights softened as the station shifted into a lower cycle, and it felt like dusk in a place that had no sun. They reached a cramped room behind the Ravelin supply desk, where the air smelled of plastic and hot circuitry. Quartermaster Wren Talbot waited there with 2 dock supervisors, a coolant tech, and one tired tug pilot still in a half-sealed suit. No one spoke at first. They looked at Cassian like he was a mirror they did not want. Talbot broke the silence. You are suspended. If we are seen with you, we are next. Cassian nodded. If you do nothing, you will still be next. The station will fail politely, and you will sign the report. The tug pilot rubbed his eyes. We heard the command channel. They want to hold convoys. That means someone wants a choke point. Cassian kept his voice calm. I pulled proof from the token conduit. It ties revocation waves to an external relay and a doctrine tag. The coolant tech swallowed. External means military. Lisa turned her tablet so they could see the timeline. The waves matched convoy windows like teeth in a gear. This is not an audit, Lisa said. It is a plan. One of the dock's supervisors glanced at the door. So what do we do? We cannot fight command. Cassian answered before fear could fill the room. We do not fight it with fists. We force it to face daylight. Talbot frowned. Daylight does not exist here. Lisa reached into a drawer and lifted a sealed unit the size of a thick book. Its casing was old and scuffed, with a stamped label that looked forgotten. Long wake relay, she said. The tug pilot blinked. That line still works? It is slow, Lisa replied. It is ugly. It is hard to silence because it routes through old infrastructure nobody wants to maintain. Talbot stared at the unit as if it were contraband. They can still block it. They can block one feed, Lisa said. Not 3, not 4, not if we stagger the packets. Cassian felt the shape of the new plan settle in his mind. Not a break-in, but a proof trail. Not heroics, but persistence. Where is Veyra? The dock's supervisor asked. The door opened, and Veyra Sorn stepped in as if she had been there the whole time. Her hair was damp with sweat, her toolkit hugged tight, and her eyes were steady. I am here, she said. Cassian felt his chest loosen, then tighten again as he remembered the cost he was dragging behind him. Veyra set her kit on the table and opened a hidden pocket. She slid out the diagnostic stub Cassian had captured in Gray Corridor. I kept it alive, she said. Barely. Lisa touched the stub like it was a fragile truth. Then we build layers. We send the wave schedule, the relay path, and the doctrine tag. We send it to multiple targets. Talbot asked the question everyone feared. And if they come for us before it transmits? Cassian looked around the room. Adults with cracked hands and tired faces. People who had not asked to become part of a war plan. Then we make sure one packet leaves no matter what, Cassian said. Veyra met his eyes. No clean exits. Cassian nodded. Only real ones. They started dividing tasks, quietly, without speeches. Lisa set the relay and drafted a routing list. Talbot arranged a decoy shipment label to mask the unit's power draw. The tug pilot offered a timing window when the dock noise would cover the relay handshake. By the time the lights shifted again, the plan existed as a stack of small decisions. Each one was easy to deny alone. Together, they would become a line the station could not pretend it never crossed. The command channel cut in before their first transmission window. It came through a secured speaker in the corridor, routed to every department head and every person with a badge worth revoking. The voice was the same one Cassian had heard earlier, filtered and distant, with the calm of someone who did not need to raise it. This is Commodore Darian Kest, Orbital Theater Command, the voice said. Ravelin Junction is now a strategic choke point. Maintain schedule denial. Hold all outbound convoys until further notice. In the room behind the supply desk, no one moved. The words made the air heavier. Veyra whispered, he is saying it out loud. Cassian felt cold spread through his stomach. Kest was not hiding behind contractors. He was naming the station as a tool. The channel stayed open. Compliance reduces casualties, Kest said. A stalled convoy prevents a wider escalation. A controlled shortage forces rational negotiation. Talbot's face tightened. Controlled shortage. Like we are a valve. Lisa's eyes stayed on the relay unit. He thinks suffering can be scheduled. The channel clicked again, and this time Cassian's name appeared on the room display, as if the station itself wanted to witness his response. Officer Cassian Rook, Kest said, your technical record indicates competence. Your recent choices indicate impulsivity. Cassian did not answer. He did not want his voice on an official recording, but the room was already a recording. Kest continued as if Cassian had spoken. I can restore your maintenance rights within one cycle, Kest said. I can release filter cassettes and coolant spools to stabilize the ring. In return, you will surrender the evidence you extracted and remain silent. Veyra stared at Cassian. She did not beg. She did not argue. She waited to see what kind of man he was when the offer came wrapped in rescue. Lisa spoke first, voice low. He is offering a bandage and asking you to accept the wound. Cassian felt the pull inside him. Sharp and real. If he accepted, people would breathe easier tonight. The cold chain would hold. The dock would stop shaking. Veyra would not be searched. Not yet. Then tomorrow, the lock would return. The wave schedule would tighten. The station would become a weapon with clean signatures. Cassian swallowed and spoke into the room's capture mic because silence would be written as consent. Commodore Kest, you are asking me to trade the station's future for one night of relief, Cassian said. The channel paused. When Kest spoke again, his tone did not change. One night of relief saves lives, Kest said. A future argument can wait. Cassian looked at Veyra. Her hands were steady on her toolkit. She was tired, but she was not selling herself back into a system that treated labor like cargo. If I hand you the proof, you will call it misinformation, Cassian said. You will tighten the leash and name it safety. Kest answered without anger. I will call it operational necessity. Your conscience is a luxury built on supply lines. Cassian felt the room shrink around the choice. He thought of the man who had pressed his forehead to the rail. He thought of Nico Vance's fear behind glass. He thought of Talbot running with a packet in his pocket. He spoke again, slower. My conscience is not a luxury, Cassian said. It is the only thing the ledger does not own. Kest's reply was immediate. Then you'll be treated as an obstacle. Obstacles are removed. The channel cut. For a moment, the room was silent except for the relay unit's low hum. The hum sounded small against the weight of command. Talbot whispered. You just declared war on paperwork. Lisa looked at Cassian. You just declared war on silence. Veyra stepped closer to Cassian, close enough that he could feel her heat. I will not let them take you alone, she said. Cassian nodded once. And I will not trade you for a clean record. Marek Thane moved faster than Cassian expected, which was how Cassian knew Thane had been waiting for the command channel to speak. A military voice gave Thane cover. Thane could claim he was protecting the station, not protecting his own network. The station lights flashed, soft and neutral, the color of policy. Gate seal protocol escalation is in effect. Workshop sectors are sealed. Data routing is restricted. Station wardenate is notified. Lisa stiffened. He is locking the corridors to the relay bay. Talbot checked the dock feed. Juno's team is moving. They are sweeping for the long wake unit. Veyra lifted her kit. Then we do not bring the unit to the bay. We bring the bay to the unit. Cassian looked at her. Meaning, Veyra pointed to a maintenance trunk on the wall. The relay does not need a perfect route. It needs one path long enough to handshake. We can splice into an old service bus and push the packet through noise. Lisa frowned. They could detect a spike. Talbot swallowed. Unless the spike looks like a tug reset. The tug pilot nodded once. I can fake a clamp recalibration. It will throw noise across the trunk. They will be watching the dock, not this room. The room tightened into motion. Not frantic, only urgent. Lisa broke the packet into layers, each one small enough to look like ordinary station telemetry. Wave schedule. External relay path. Doctrine tag. Varnak carve-out list. Each piece alone could be dismissed. Together, they formed intent. Cassian watched the door camera feed. Station wardenate boots appeared at the far junction, moving in pairs. Juno Price's voice came over the corridor speaker, calm and formal. All personnel remain in assigned zones. Unauthorized devices will be confiscated for safety review. Veyra crouched at the maintenance trunk and removed a panel with quick, clean motions. She exposed a bundle of lines and a connector block scuffed by years. Cassian held the light, then shifted it away when he heard footsteps close. Even light could betray. Lisa whispered, "Window is in 3 minutes." Talbot asked, "If they enter?" Cassian answered, voice low. "Then we delay them with paper. Their favorite weapon." He stepped into the corridor and met Juno before she reached the door. 2 officers flanked her, scanners ready. "Officer Rook," Juno said, "you are in a restricted zone." Cassian kept his voice steady. "You're enforcing a lock that is breaking the dock." "That is not your decision," Juno replied. "It is my responsibility," Cassian said. "If you detain me, log it properly. Not as a safety escort. As a detention under right suspension." Juno paused. "Why?" "Because if you're going to write my name, write it correctly," Cassian said. "And include the timestamp. Include the reason. Include Director Thane's directive." Juno's visor tilted. Cassian could feel her weighing the choice. A sloppy detention was easy. A correct one left a trail. Behind her, an officer shifted, impatient. Juno spoke, clipped. "You are stalling." Cassian nodded. "Yes." For a heartbeat, Juno did not move. Then she gestured toward the door. "Search the room," she said. Quickly, Cassian stepped aside. The officers moved in. Inside, Veyra's hands never stopped. She clipped a line, spliced a connector, and seated the long-wake relay lead as if it were just another maintenance job. The relay unit hummed, then steadied. Lisa glanced at the timer on her tablet. "Now," she whispered. The tug pilot keyed his device. Somewhere on spine dock, a clamp reset chirped, and threw a clean burst of noise across the service bus. The room lights flickered once, as if the station blinked. Lisa pressed send. The relay unit pulsed, quiet and stubborn. A handshake started, slow as an old ship turning. When the officers looked up, scanner raised. The device chirped, confused by the noise. Unusual routing, the officer said. Veyra did not look at him. She kept her hands on the connector, as if touch alone could keep it alive. Cassian stepped into the room and held up both hands. That trunk is part of a coolant safety loop, Cassian said. If you yank it, you will trip the ring. Then you will write a report about why you did it. Juno's visor turned toward the trunk. Cassian heard the smallest hesitation in her breath. Thane appeared in the corridor behind her, not running, never running. He walked into view with a tablet in hand and a comm that looked like virtue. Officer Price, Thane said, confiscate the device. Immediately, Juno looked between Thane and the trunk. She knew the difference between a safe order and a clean order. Thane's voice sharpened. Now, Veyra whispered to Cassian, barely audible. They will take it before it finishes. Cassian looked at the relay unit. The handshake bar was almost full, but not yet. A few seconds felt like hours. He leaned toward Veyra, voice low. If they pull it, can you keep the line seated by hand? Veyra nodded once. For a few seconds. Maybe. Cassian turned to Lisa. If we lose this packet, do we have another copy? Lisa swallowed. No, not complete. Cassian felt the cost settle. On his shoulders. He could step aside and let them take it. He could keep his body intact and lose the truth. He chose the truth. Cassian stepped closer to the trunk, placing himself between the officers and Veyra's hands. Director Thane, this is not safety. This is censorship, Cassian said. Thane smiled faintly. It is risk control. Cassian held the stare. Then control this. I will file a formal objection and request a recorded hearing. If you seize devices, you must list them. If you list them, you create a chain of custody. You hate chain of custody. Thane's smile thinned. You think you can corner me with procedure. I think you live by procedure, Cassian replied. So do it clean. Thane raised his hand. Take it. The officer lunged. Cassian did not strike. He only shifted, shoulder into the path, turning the officer into the wall with his own momentum. It was clumsy and human, not heroic. Juno's voice snapped. Enough. Veyra pressed her palm against the connector block, holding the seated line steady as the trunk vibrated. Her face tightened with effort, but her hands did not shake. The relay unit pulsed again. The handshake completed. Lisa's tablet flashed a confirmation that looked almost unreal. Packet accepted by long wake relay. Cassian exhaled once, sharp, as if he had been holding breath for a whole watch. Veyra whispered. It went. Cassian met her eyes. He did not smile. He only nodded, because the cost was still coming. Thane saw the flash on Lisa's screen. His comm cracked for a fraction, the first honest emotion Cassian had seen from him. You just endangered the station, Thane said. Cassian's voice stayed low. No, I just refuse to let you use it as a weapon. Juno stepped forward and lowered her scanner. Her voice was colder now, not cruel, only final. Officer Rook, you are detained, Juno said. Veyra Sorn, you are under review. Devices will be seized. Veyra looked at Cassian. Her eyes carried fear, but also relief, the kind that comes when a choice is made and cannot be undone. Cassian leaned closer, quiet enough that only she could hear. I'm sorry, he said. Veyra shook her head once. Do not apologize for standing. The officers moved in. Cassian did not resist. Resistance was not the victory. The packet was. As they led him down the corridor, the station lights shifted again, smooth and indifferent. Somewhere far away, Spine Dock still breathed, and somewhere beyond the hull, Long Wake Relay carried a truth that would arrive late and still matter. Spine Dock did not explode. It clenched. Clamp arms held cargo sleds too long, then released them too late. The dock count board kept adding minutes like it was counting breaths. Cold chain cradles sat in a slow queue, losing temperature a fraction at a time. Cassian Rook sat in a glass-walled compliance room, hands on his knees. Station Wardenate called it safe. Cassian called it a place where records could be rewritten. Juno Price stood outside the door, helmet tucked under her arm. "You will be reviewed," Juno said. "I'm being managed," Cassian replied. Juno held his gaze. "Do not make this worse." Across the station, Veyra Sorn worked in Sumpworks Bay with no valid badge. A coolant manifold leaked a thin mist that glittered in the work light. She sealed it anyway, because the coolant ring did not care about permissions. Ren Talbot waited by the rail, watching a gauge that kept climbing. Varnak Logistics Combined docked early, Talbot said. They brought certified crews. Veyra tightened a fastener by feel. They brought invoices. The dispatch board flashed a new pattern. Tug slots delayed in waves, gates sealed in sequence, cargo lanes rerouted into dead ends. It looked orderly. It acted like a choke. Talbot swallowed. Dispatch calls it Kesnet, a timing layer that throttles, writes, and gates. Veyra looked up at the ceiling speaker. So he controls the station by controlling when it can breathe. Lisa Karen slipped into the bay, eyes scanning the corridor. She carried no tablet in the open. Longwake Relay accepted our first packet, Lisa whispered. But Kest is moving faster. He will call the denial safety. A calm voice leaked through the station channel, precise and distant. This is Commodore Darian Kest. Maintain schedule denial. Hold outbound convoys. Veyra looked at the ceiling speaker. He is speaking like this station is a lever. Lisa nodded. He needs congestion to force a decision above us. Talbot's face pinched with fatigue. Cassian is locked behind glass. Thane will shape the story before oversight hears it. Veyra's jaw set. Then we make the net visible while it is running. They waited for the next wave. Doors across Spine Dock sealed at once, pulling Wardenate attention toward the gates. In the same minute, a heat dump request flashed in Sumpworks Bay and was denied by protocol. Veyra stared at the denial line. If I cannot vent, the ring cooks. Talbot asked, can you reroute? Veyra nodded. For a little while. Then something else cooks. She opened a manual valve and bled coolant into an auxiliary loop. The loop was meant for emergency, not for routine. It would buy time, and it would leave a signature no ledger could bless. In Gray Corridor, Veyra and Lisa reached a plane service console. No vault, no drama, just a panel nobody admired. Veyra opened it and clipped in a mirror lead. The screen filled with throttles and gate states, all stamped with an external armored relay tag. Lisa leaned close. External authority is logged. That matters. Veyra captured the last stretch of timing data to a small buffer device. Then they waited in the dark for the command voice to speak again. This is Commodore Darian Kest. Denial continues. Veyra recorded one clean breath of it and stopped. She resealed the panel, and they moved back to Sumpworks Bay. Talbot met them with a look that asked for time. How long until the ring trips? Lisa asked. Talbot answered. Less than an hour if the next tug wave dumps heat again. Veyra held up the buffer device. We have a net trace in his order. We can push it through messy worker channels. Lisa nodded. It will spread because it looks like a complaint, not a manifesto. A Wardenate tone sounded, gentle and threatening at once. Gate seal posture elevated. Unauthorized maintenance actions will be documented. Veyra turned back to the manifold. Document this. The station is failing on schedule. In the compliance room, Cassian heard boots and then the soft glide of a door. A liaison in a new suit entered, smile practiced. Officer Rook, he said. I am Martin Hale, command liaison. Cassian did not stand. Then you are here to offer a deal. Hale, set a tablet down. You will sign a retraction. You will state that your conclusions lacked context. Cassian read the first lines. Clean language, clean intent, and a lie that would sound reasonable in a hearing. And if I do not? Cassian asked. Then your suspension becomes revocation. Hale replied. You will be removed from the maintenance registry. Cassian felt the weight of that word. Registry removal was not jail. It was exile from work. Hale leaned in, voice low. If you sign, conditional rights are restored. Filter cassettes and coolant spools are released. Ravelin Junction stabilizes. Cassian looked past him at the looping safety notice. Silence for air. Truth for relief. He spoke softly. What happens after it stabilizes? Hale's smile did not move. Then the station complies. Compliance reduces losses. Cassian did not sign. I cannot trade truth for oxygen, he said. Hale's eyes hardened. Truth is a story. Oxygen is a metric. Cassian met his gaze. Metrics are how you hide a story. Hale collected the tablet. You have one more window. The next cycle came with controlled chaos. Spine Doc ran on exhausted hands and throttled permissions. In the dispatch room, operators watched the Kest net pulses roll in like tides. Each pulse sealed a gate, delayed a tug, and forced another heat dump into the wrong minute. Veyra kept the coolant ring under its limit by choosing which sections could run hot and which could go dark. She did it by ear and habit, not by authority. Her hands smelled like coolant and metal, and her shoulders burned with the weight of being the only answer the station had left. Talbot moved ration locks to keep people on their feet. Lisa pushed the net trace and the voice fragment through worker desks and old text relays. The post looked small and plain. Gate throttles match convoy windows. External armored relay tag present. Command voice orders denial. Small posts spread faster than speeches. It was not enough to kill the lie. It was enough to make the lie sweat. In the compliance room, Marek Thane arrived with paper instead of tablet. Paper was harder to audit. Signed a retraction, Thane said. I will recommend restoration. The station needs quiet. Cassian stared at him. You need quiet. Thane's smile thinned. You are emotional. I am human, Cassian replied. My friend is keeping your station alive while you write. Thane leaned closer. You can keep your career. You can keep her. Stop making noise. Cassian felt the pull of the offer. One signature, and gates might open now. People might breathe easier tonight. Then the wave would return, the net would tighten, and another station would be used next. He shook his head. I will not. Sign away a choke point so you can wash your hands. Thane's calm cracked by a fraction. Then you'll be processed. After Thane left, Cassian found the only channel the station could not fully lock. A maintenance incident draft required a human narrative. Drafts persisted for review. Cassian opened the form and wrote, careful and plain. Revocation waves align with convoy windows. External armored relay tag observed. Varnak carve-outs listed. Doctrine label ties denial to Darian Kest and Kest Doctrine Cell. He saved the draft. It did not publish. It existed. Minutes later, Juno Price entered, visor up. She noticed the open draft and read without touching the screen. You cannot prove this, Juno said. Longwake already has the first packet, Cassian replied. Worker channels have the net trace and his voice. This draft ties it to Doctrine. Juno's breathing shifted. You will burn everyone who helped you. Cassian shook his head. Kest is burning them already. I'm only turning on a light. Juno paused, then copied the draft reference to her own device with a quick tap. I did not see this, Juno said. Cassian answered. You only have to let it be seen. Juno stepped closer to the door, then stopped. If I move you, it becomes public, she said. If it becomes public, command retaliates. Cassian nodded. Then choose the moment when retaliation costs them more than truth. Before the next shift ended, the moment came sooner than Cassian expected. An external audit feed opened to the whole station because the congestion had become visible beyond the hull. Kest appeared on screen, expression unchanged. Thane stood below the screen, pale, hands still clean. Kest spoke with the calm of certainty. Compliance prevents escalation. Juno Price walked Cassian into the dispatch hall under escort. She did not look at him. She only kept moving, as if motion itself could hide a choice. Veyra entered from a side corridor with Lisa and Talbot. Her hair was damp with sweat. Her hands were steady. She looked like someone who had kept a machine alive by refusing permission to matter. Cassian and Veyra stood side by side with no valid badges. They were present only because the station needed witnesses. Lisa had already sent the net trace and the voice fragment. Now the hearing needed the piece Kest could not shrug off. Cassian asked for the floor. You used this station as leverage, Cassian said. You timed rights revocation to convoy windows and called it safety. Kest's gaze did not waver. Operational necessity. Cassian continued. Here is the doctrine label behind the net. Here is the external authority tag that stamps every pulse. An auditor displayed Cassian's incident draft on the main screen. The words were plain. The alignment was obvious. A second screen showed the KestNet mirror stream captured from Gray Corridor. It matched the convoy windows like gears. Veyra spoke next, voice steady. You treat labor like a valve. We are not parts. When you deny venting, the ring cooks. People pay the price you call acceptable. Kes tried to speak, but the audio fragment played first. His own voice ordering denial, short and clean. No contractors. No confusion. Thane lifted his hand slightly. Directorate actions followed command guidance. Any addendums were for station continuity. The auditor pulled up the addendum circle approvals. Varnak fee routes appeared in a neat tree of signatures. Thane's name sat at the trunk. Thane's mouth opened, then closed. He had built a world where paper protected him. Paper was now the blade. The auditor's voice came over the hall speaker, precise and final. Ravelin Junction operational rights are restored under external monitoring. Addendum circle approvals are suspended pending investigation. Maintenance registry revocations for Cassian Rook and Veyra Sorn will proceed. Effective at cycle end. The verdict cut both ways. The station lived. They would be pushed off the line. Veyra's hand found Cassian's sleeve, a small touch that meant stay. Cassian whispered, I am sorry. Veyra shook her head. Do not be. We chose. They waited for transfer in a narrow berth assigned to outbound labor. The air was cooler. The silence was honest. Cassian looked at his hands. I do not know what I am now. Veyra leaned back against the wall. You are still a mechanic. You just lost the badge that pretended you were not. Cassian breathed out. We will have fewer doors. Veyra nodded. Then we will learn the doors that matter. A soft chime sounded on the berth console. A public notice forwarded through a worker board. Maintenance rights restored at Farpoint Trestle Station. Revocation wave suspended pending audit. Cassian stared at the line. It was small. It was not triumph. It was a switch turning back on somewhere else. Veyra read it too. Her eyes softened. It is spreading, she said. Cassian nodded. Truth moves slower than force. But it moves. Veyra looked at him, tired and present. We will work. We will live with what we did. Cassian answered, and we will not sign away another station to keep our names clean. Outside, Ravelin Junction kept breathing, held together by people who refused to let schedules become weapons without a record. Ravelin Junction did not win a war. It simply refused to be used as a weapon in silence. Cassian Rook and Veyra Sorn lost their badges. They lost the comfort of clean records. But they saved a station from becoming a lever in someone else's schedule. And somewhere far away, another dock light turned green again, not because of mercy, but because the truth finally reached a door that could not pretend it never saw it. If this story stayed with you, help it travel. Like, share, and subscribe for more hard science fiction where ordinary people hold the line. Your support keeps these stories alive, one station at a time.